How's it going, Rebel Nation? Seth Austin here, and I'm excited to go under the visor this evening talking with first-year head football coach of your Ole Miss Rebels, Lane Kiffin. Coach, thanks for joining us. First and foremost, how are you and your family doing?
We're doing well. Appreciate it. Staying safe and ready to get back to work.
I know it's kind of an unusual circumstance for a lot of college coaches right now, but it's a lot of extra time at home as well. How have you been enjoying some extra time with your family?
Well, trying to maximize it, like we teach our players, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I know there's a lot of negative out there about it and bad things happening, but at the same time, how often do you ever get to spend so much time with people, whether that's your children, for me, whether that's, grandparents for some kids or things like that, we don't ever get this time because normally they always have activities, they got things to do, and now they got nothing to do. So maximizing it, this once in a lifetime opportunity.
Well, one way a lot of people have been spending their free time, and I know you tweeted about it as well, was the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. It captivated a lot of people. You're a competitor. You've been around a lot of competitors. What was the biggest takeaway you had from watching that documentary that really got inside the head of Michael Jordan?
Well, I think we all knew, he was competitive and knew how great he was. And I grew up in that era of watching him, as a young kid. Remember watching him in junior high and high school and all that. And I think what I didn't know, and maybe most people didn't know, that it was just, so ultra competitive. You knew he was on game day, you knew all that, but to see how he was in practice, how he held teammates, accountable in a hard style, was really impressive.
Is that something you hope your guys watched, have been spending their Sundays doing?
Yeah, and recruits, talk to recruits about it, our own players about it, and just all the times in there that there isn't a coach around and he's still doing things to get better.
You've been around a lot of great coaches like that. Coached 4 Heisman Trophy winners. What's an underlying factor that you've seen in a lot of those guys that you're looking for in current and future Ole Miss Rebels?
Work ethic, their grit, the way that, all 4 of those guys, the 3 USC guys and Derrick Henry at Alabama, every one of them, would be considered the guys first in, last to leave, always wanting to learn, always wanting to get better. In a number of those situations, you got guys that were at the highest level that could have not kept pushing. Matt Leonard had already won a Heisman, coming back for another year. Reggie was, I think, 3rd in the Heisman, sophomore year, and, worked even harder going into his junior year to win it.
Let's get into some questions from some Ole Miss fans from Twitter. At James A. Bruno, he wants to know, when you're not coaching, what's your favorite activity to do?
Besides the kids, activity would be fishing. That really kind of always a little bit, but especially the 3 years down in Boca, living on the water there with the boat in the backyard, really got into that a lot.
Thomas Goris 88 wants to know, what's your favorite game that you've gotten to be a part of as a coach?
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question. It always seems like at the time, the national championship games are, some pretty special moments at FAU, even though not on the same type of level. But just because those kids weren't used to winning, and for them, that first, conference championship was really neat. So that would be hard to pick one. I mean, I guess I would say Alabama Clemson, just because that's the last national championship being apart. Probably would be the first one that I would think of, because the game went back and forth so many directions, and I think each team, over 500 yards of offense. It was crazy.
Certainly fortunate enough to have plenty to choose from. Will Clements from Twitter is asking, what are some of the biggest challenges a first-year head coach faces?
Well, there's a lot of them, but this is magnified now with the corona. To have no spring ball with your kids, is very difficult and challenging. But in general, first year, it's always learning your roster and your staff, especially the staffs are so big nowadays. I don't know what we have, but there's a ton of them. And so not just it used to just be your normal coaches and a couple of GAs. Now it's up to 10 coaches, 4 GAs, and you got all kinds of, what we call outfield coaches.
How will you work on getting your brand, your culture into this program and get your players and coaches that you aren't able to see as much as you have been in past years? How do you get them to embrace it so quickly?
Well, that's going to be very challenging. We thought we had a good good recipe. After doing it at FAU, going from 3 wins before we got there to 11 in the first year, and a quick turnaround. So, but again, this is a whole new set of circumstances and obstacles for us with Corona.
We made a big announcement earlier this week adding USC to our future schedule. It's fun for fans to think about now, so far down the line at this point. But how big are games like that, the ones against USC, Baylor opening the year, as you try to take Ole Miss and put them back on a national map?
Well, they're great games, national, like you say, national recognition, two of the greatest, like I said, game day places in all of college football. So, and especially like to me, I think like the Baylor ones, Louisville the next year, when it's your first one of the year, it gives kids something excited to look forward to all off season and work a little bit harder.
I'm interested in part of your support system, you being an offensive mind, as well as you call offensive plays. You've got your dad, who's one of the best defensive architects in the history of football. How's him being a part of your journey helped you as you get to making game plans that are going to attack defenses?
Well, that helped a lot growing up. Not just growing up around football, but then with him and sitting in all the meetings and then understanding that Tampa defense, in and out, and learning from him. And then everyone started copying it. So as everyone started copying it, that's when I kind of started, at USC coaching and stuff. And so, kind of like you knew the answers to the test of what everybody was installing on defense, we knew how to beat it.
Now we're going to go with a little bit more of a hot seat rapid fire style. The following questions presented by Van Atkins Jewelers. Marin Bell from Twitter asks, why visors over hats? I mean, it's the name of the segment here. Why do you prefer visors over hats?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I know, I think it had a lot to do with Spurrier, growing up a big Florida fan, their style of play, the offense and the visor and everything. I think that's really where it started probably. I don't know. I don't really know. And the hat thing just really would feel really weird on it, on a field. I wore a hat one day for some reason. I don't remember what, for a practice, and just felt strange.
Well, that gets that out there. Marin, thanks for the question. At 662 RBJ, the ever important question, is a hot dog a sandwich?
I've never heard that question, RBJ. I don't know that. I feel like that's a definite South question I should probably know, because I feel like everyone's heard that maybe, and I have not heard that. So I've never thought of it. So I'm going to go with yeah.
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that one. PW Spear already has California on their mind. What's your go-to In-N-Out order?
I don't like all, Knox, who now have changed to Knoxford due to fan requests. He goes animal style,
Okay.
double-double. But I just do the double-double without all the other stuff on it.
Have not had it. I'm excited to get out there and give it a try. Kenny Skelton on Facebook, what's the toughest stadium you've coached at?
A&M was really loud the year we played there at Alabama. I mean, as everyone knows, and it was like 100 degrees during the day. I used to say Oregon, even though it's not as big as the SEC stadiums, was really loud and hard to deal with the noise there. And then really being on the other side of Alabama, I guess we only lost one home game in 3 years, and that was Ole Miss. That's a great place too, having to be on the other side of Tennessee and go in there and play into Alabama. I always remember going there and it's 30 minutes before kickoff and the thing was already filled.
You said that you enjoy fishing. What's your favorite type of fish to go out and try to catch?
I think tarpon season, which is right now, just because they're such monsters. You're catching 150, 160-pound fish, which is just crazy. They look like big or little sharks coming out of the water. And it's so hard to find them. And It's really with them. It's almost like hunting. And I'm not a hunter, but people talk about hunter about having to track them, find them. That's what it's really like with them.
It sounds almost like recruiting in a way, trying to find the big fish that are hard to find.
Big game hunting.
Ain't
many 5-stars.
Absolutely. Which artist is on your pregame playlist?
Well, I just got done with a run and Bon Jovi was playing, so I'll go with Bon Jovi.
Last movie you watched?
Presley, what was that movie last night? Swingers.
Okay. Would you rather play a day game or a night game?
Kids didn't like it very much. I was trying to explain Vince Vaughn back. They didn't even recognize Vince Vaughn back then. They just know the new Vince Vaughn. We actually bought our house out here in Manhattan Beach. So they know him from that. They don't know him from movies back then.
Well, they got to catch up. They got a lot on the IMDb list for them to see. Would you rather play a day game or a night game?
I used to always say day games because that's how football was born, and was supposed to be. I think supposed to always kind of be, get up, kick off, families, get to go back 5 o'clock. They're done, 12:30 kickoff and have Saturday nights and stuff. But because of TV, that's changed now, and the night games sure are more exciting.
And then the last rapid style one: if you could not coach football, which sport would you want to coach?
God, these are some good questions, fans. Some ones I've never gotten.
You a hockey guy?
Well, I feel like I don't have to do very much in basketball because every basketball coach, like when I watch the NBA and they're mic'd up, just says the same thing. Hey, we got to rebound better. We got to block more shots. We got to score more. So, I kind of feel like I could do that.
Let's wrap this up with a few more fan questions. You brought up how this is such a difficult experience trying to figure out how to move forward, and the fans are asking questions of that ilk. The Judge 99 on Twitter and Mark Daniels on Facebook. How has the current situation going on in our world impacted recruiting for you and your staff?
Well, obviously there's no in-person recruiting, so that's been very challenging, especially again for a first-year staff. This is not ideal timing because kids are making decisions right now and normally would have already been on our campus. So a lot of Zooms, a lot of calls, just trying to maximize the situation that we're in.
WT Helmets from Twitter. What's the most useful lesson that you've learned when you were the coach of the Oakland Raiders in the NFL?
I think just, being at that level and seeing how much of a business it is. And, the coaches and players are more on the same level, especially there were players older than Warren Sapp was 3 years older than me, I think. So, I think just learning that side of it.
And then the final question we have for you here tonight, Coach. Cameron Posey from Facebook. It's an important one to end on. How excited are you to get back to Oxford and get practices going?
Really excited. And I hope that, when they come out with the rules here pretty soon, that obviously as long as it's safe, they give us some extra practice time with our kids. And so, we really miss that time.
Well, Coach, thank you for letting us go under the visor here this evening. I appreciate your time. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And we're really looking forward to all the excitement that you and your staff and players are going to bring to Oxford here this fall.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate all the questions out there, fans. Hotty toddy.